It's an honor to be here. My name is Barry Dolinger, and I wanted to speak with you today about our attention, or as Adrienne Marie Brown likes to call it, liberating our attention. She's an organizer and activist, and she says the following about what we choose to pay attention to. What we give attention to grows, what we pay attention to grows. There's an affirmation. I am a commitment to shining sunlight on everything I want to see grow. I am a commitment to divesting from anything that isn't rooted in love. This is a version of what the sages call Torat Chayim from the Psalms. Turn from evil, turn attention from evil, and do good. And this is the point. We often go through life and don't consider what it is we're paying attention to. There are certain defaults or habitual ways of looking at things that we don't notice. Our Parsha provides two very pertinent examples, a negative example and a positive example. So I wanted to start with the Sur Meirah, turning from the negative. The very beginning of the Parsha, the weekly reading, we read that there was a new king in Egypt who wanted to oppress the Jews. But first, before oppressing the Israelites, it says, Hava nitchak malo pen yirbev ayaki tikrena milchama v'nosaf kam hu al sonenu v'nilcham banu v'ala min ha'aretz. The verse tells us that Pharaoh had a thought. These Jews, when an enemy attacks us, they're going to side with the enemy, and they provide an internal security threat, a sort of third column within our society. And so as a result, we need to oppress them. And so then it goes on to say, right after that, Vayasimu alav sarim misim. Then they appointed officers over them, taskmasters, to enslave them and to burden the Jews. And so the first prerequisite to engaging in acts of physical violence against the Israelites are a thought or a speech, a sort of a projection of their motives. They're evil. And since they're evil and they're going to join our enemies, we need to oppress them. This is later characterized retroactively, looking backwards in Kitabo, when an Israelite brings their first fruit offering. They describe this episode and they say, Vayareo tanu hamitzrim, often mistranslated by the Haggadah as they did evil unto us, Vayareu otanu, but the grammar, as Rav Soloveitchik pointed out, is hif'il, it's causative. Vayareu otanu, they caused us to be evil. In their minds, in their mouths, they said, we will join the enemy. They projected evil motivations and, in a sense, dehumanized us with their language. And so this is the first piece, Sur Meirah. Often we choose to pay attention to perceived threats, to anxieties, and we cast narratives about people based on those threats, which seem plausible. And it's actually that assigning of motive and narrative, often negative and often not founded in truth, which is the prerequisite or the precursor to violence. The way that regular people come to do violence against other holy people is first by casting them in such a way that the violence is permissible. And that's what the Egyptians did here too. So the Torah is teaching us about the psychology of engaging violence against other people. It doesn't start with violence. It starts with a thought. It starts with speech. And so that's what Adrienne Marie Brown says. I'm a commitment. I am a commitment, not committed. I am a commitment. I live this way to divesting from anything that isn't rooted in love. I'm not going to engage those thoughts. I'm going to notice them when they happen because we all have them. I'm going to say, oh, is that true, or is that anxiety speaking? Sur Meirah, turn from the evil. Turn from making other people evil. That's the drasha for that part. Va'aseh tov, but I don't want to leave it with this kind of negative, which is obviously applicable in our day when there are so many different people who are vested in our feeling anxious and profit off of it and promote it, and systems that promote it, even without evil motivations, but the systems promote it. There's a positive, va'aseh tov. What's that? So if we look at Moshe, the use of this root, sur, to turn, is used again with Moshe's attention. Come to the burning bush. Vayomer Moshe asura na ve'aret mareh hagadol hazeh madua lo yivar hasnem. Moshe says, I will turn and look at this mareh hagadol, this incredible sight. So the first piece is asura na. He doesn't see the bush. He makes a conscious decision to look in a certain way at the bush. And what is the nature of the way he looks at the bush? Mareh hagadol. Awe, radical amazement. Incredible, the bush. It's a way of looking at things. And that's actually what Hashem sees. Vayar Hashem, not that Moshe was the most humble person on earth, but kisar lirot. He saw that he turned to look. He changed the way he normally looks at things. And this is the symbol of the bush. Normally, slaves can never escape. Normally, the greatest empire in the world, the Egyptian empire, is not taken down by a bunch of downtrodden slaves. Normally, systems go as they are. People can't come together to combat global problems. Slavery remains. There's nothing we can do. And there's a skeptical looking, a cynical looking at our problems. But Moshe looked at a burning bush and said, even though normally the way of slaves is to burn, but here they're burning, but the bush is not, it's not consumed. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's the quality with which he looked at the bush. And so it's as much about the looking, the way we look at things as the bush. Do we look at things as inevitable, as going to be the way they always are? Or do we see opportunity for things to be different than the default? That's the key. And when that happens, Hashem reciprocates. Vayomer Hashem, Ra'o ra'iti adoni ami asher b'mitzrayim. I see. Moshe sees in a different way, and that causes Hashem to see. And so here's the theology. We can be the sort of compassionate divine vision we want in the world. We can cultivate a quality of looking at things as mareh hagadol. Once we look at things in a way that we say, wow, life is holy and beautiful and incredible, and we cultivate that instead of rote, we'll then be inspired and optimistic that we can change defaults that aren't the way we want them to be, the way they ought to be, with love and compassion, as Moshe does. So to summarize this two-part teaching about, let's call it attention liberation. That's the term that Adrienne Marie Brown uses from slavery in the Parsha. One is, look at narratives like, those slaves are going to join our enemies. What are those narratives in our lives that we have about other people where we cast them as evil? Vayareu otanu. We were made to be evil. When do we make other people evil? And is it justified? Or are they really holy? And could we understand more? And if we did that, might we not excuse some of the things we did to those people? That's the challenge. It's hard. The second piece then, ba'aseh tov, where can we look at things and see opportunities where we don't see them currently? Where normally with cynicism tells us action is impossible, things don't change. A Moshe mindset tells us, Asura na ve'eret amareh hagadol hazeh. No, I'm going to choose to look. I'm going to choose to cast my attention in a particular place. I'm going to choose to look at it optimistically. These slaves don't have to be slaves forever. And when that happens, we create our own reality and Hashem will respond. Ra'o ra'iti et oni ami asher b'mitzrayim. Then Hashem sees and Hashem acts. I hope that we're able to take this teaching to heart. For me, I really feel like this is the important teaching of the moment, our attention. So many of the evils in our societies are systemic. And it's not that anyone chooses to do them, but systems are in place which don't see the bigger picture and don't see mareh hagadol, don't look at things with awe. And so the question is, how can we, as inspired religious and spiritual personalities, look at life as holy and full of awe? And then how might that change the way we act? Shabbat Shalom.